This conference will now be recorded.
All right. Hi, everybody, and thank you for coming out today to our Programmers Forum, where we're going to talk about serving homeschoolers and families schooling at home. My name is Casey Conlin. I'm the Library Sustainability Coordinator at the Mid-Hudson Library System, and today we are joined by Amy Smith, who is our Library Sustainability Intern. Amy also works at the Red Hook Public Library, where she does a lot of work with youth and other parents. So it's really lucky that we actually have her because she's a practitioner in the field right now and she sees what's going on. And I think we all know that it's kind of a wild situation that we have. I personally have two kids at home that I am schooling from home. I'm not actually homeschooling them, but I'm doing both kindergarten and fifth grade insofar as I can do it and doing as much as I can. So there's a lot involved with that. There's tech troubleshooting. There is just trying to figure out what the assignments are. And there's definitely a lot of calming kids down who can't find links to go to meetings or to Zoom meetings or whatever that they're doing that day. So I think that this will be particularly useful to be able to get everybody together here and to hear about some of the things that our libraries are doing out there. So I wanted to turn it over to Amy, who's going to take us through what's going on out there today in homeschooling and schooling from home and how libraries can help.
Thanks, Casey. I'm assuming everyone can hear me.
Yep.
Great. So like Casey said, welcome to the Programmers Forum. The first thing I want to talk about is homeschooling versus schooling from home. The differences may seem obvious, but thinking about them in a little bit more detail will help you meet people's needs. So homeschooling, I'm just going to quickly define, is when people choose and register with the school district to say that they will be educating their kids outside the school district. Schooling at home is what a lot of people are suddenly finding themselves in, whether it's by choice, remote learning for a certain period of time or for the school year, or whether it's because their schools simply are not offering in-person classes. The reason that I wanted to mention this difference and point it out is because the motivation behind what's happening in the home can greatly influence both the questions you're going to get, but also the way in which you might answer them or try and meet their needs. So for a lot of parents, who are suddenly schooling from home last spring and having a continuation of that now, this is not by choice. So this has sort of been foisted on them, either because of their concerns about public health, if it's remote learning by choice, or because of the school district's concerns about public health. In homeschooling, there is a vast array of motivations, and I won't even attempt to say that I'm going to name them all, but you do want to be somewhat aware of some of the major sort of groupings. So last September, when New York State made immunizations mandatory for school attendance, there was a large increase in the number of homeschoolers, families that chose to educate at home instead of complying with the immunization law. And this population is not dissimilar in some ways to the schooling from home in certain key ways. Many of them feel like there was no choice, that this was foisted on them. Then there are people who chose homeschooling for homeschooling, and there's an array of reasons. In some families, their child or one of their children may have learning disabilities or certain types of educational challenges that the families would prefer to meet at home. In some of those families, you'll have some kids being homeschooled and some kids going to school. In other cases, it's a religious motivation, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. And for some, it's a desire to have more experiential hands-on learning. I forgot to advance my slide while I was talking. I apologize. So the reason that I wanted to go into these motivations is in part because they affect the methods that the families are using. And again, I don't perceive my job as to judge why someone's doing something or how they're doing it, but being aware of people's motivations can help you meet their needs better. So then we get to this key issue that often comes up with homeschooling, which is censorship and service. And this is where it's helpful to think about who is asking you the questions. So you will, on occasion, have families that are, for example, homeschooling for religious reasons, and the parents may ask reference questions for materials that, apologious biology is the one that that I've experienced, where people want biology materials that don't talk about evolution, for example. And in that case, you have to use your own judgment, obviously. But the way I approach it is when the parent is asking me, then they're asking for a reference question. I'm going to give them what they need. The challenge is when a child asks you for something, and you can be pretty sure that their parents wouldn't be into it. Again, this is going to depend on your library and how they handle it, but in our case at Red Hook, and in my experience, I answer the reference question for the person who's asking me. So if a child wants a book about dinosaurs that doesn't show them alive at the same time as humans, I'm going to give that child the book. It's not up to us to parent. It is up to us to meet the needs of the patron who's asking the questions. And you can do this in a completely non-confrontational way. I'm not suggesting confrontation in any way. I'm just saying that you do want to be slightly aware that this may be an issue that comes up. And this is also going to potentially come up with teenagers. It won't be that much different than some of the other teenage-related, adolescent-related reference question awkwardness. The difference is that homeschoolers, the kids and the teenagers, their parents are in the library with them most of the time when they come, at least in my experience. So you may end up in a conversation about resources that you wouldn't necessarily in your teen room for teens who are coming and hanging out after school. Okay. So where are these homeschoolers? How do you find them? And what do they need? So one of the first things that I want to encourage people to think about is their community partners. There are already people and organizations, yours might be one of them, out there meeting the needs of homeschoolers, and many of those things that are offered overlap with the needs of schooling at home. So one of the first things that I recommend you do is look at your school district. Some school districts actually provide materials for homeschoolers. And if that is the case in your district, having a set of those on hand, or even just making sure that you know whether or not they do, is helpful. I don't know about all the other folks in youth services on this webinar, but over the summer, I got a lot of inquiries. I think I'm going to start homeschooling. How do I start homeschooling, etc. And so knowing what your school district provides is a real quick, easy way to help people get going. The other thing is talk to other public libraries around you. The thing about homeschoolers, and I'll say this again later, is that if you build it, they will come. Word of mouth among the homeschooling community it's kind of amazing. And so talk to other libraries around you. Talk to museums, historical societies near you, community centers, find out what they're already offering, and then coordinate. Homeschoolers will travel for whatever you're offering, whether it's a collection development, some special thing that circulates, or a program. So it would be smart to coordinate with other organizations in your area that might be doing something on similar days. You don't want to, if there's a big program in Hudson, you don't want to, offer something right across the river, maybe, but they will travel far. Okay. Right. So when talking about the school district, this is a place where schooling from home needs you can be addressing sort of at the same time. Some of this, because COVID has changed our reality, will depend on the relationships you've already built with people in the school district. But reaching out now is also a great idea if you don't have a relationship. And I'll give you some examples. So school librarians, that's maybe obvious one. If your district has a curriculum director or a director of technology or whoever's in charge of technology, reaching out to those people and saying, hey, I'm here, the public library is here, you guys are overloaded. We're ready, willing, and able to support whatever it is you need. I mean, don't say whatever it is you need unless you really feel like you can do that. You can outline what you say. We're here to help with remote tech assistance. We're here to help with, it'll depend on your particular situation if you want to enumerate resources. If you don't have these relationships already, I recommend doing it this way, reaching out and saying, we're here to help. Because that way, when or if you get patrons calling you, asking specific questions, where appropriate, you can either connect them to the right person, or you can reach out to that person and say, hey, remember me? So I'm getting this question frequently, and you can get more information in that way. It's helpful if you make your first reach out to be something where you're offering something to them. The other sorts of things that you want to think clear a lot about are reaching out to the ENL teachers, or in some districts it's ESL or ELL. I'll talk in a moment about the particular needs there for schooling at home, but those are also important folks to connect with. And same with special education, which I'll talk later. The PTA or the PTSO, depending on your district, what they have, is another organization that if you are meeting the needs of folks schooling at home, you can let these parent organizations know, right? Like, here's stuff that we've prepared, here's connections. And it's also a way to find out what the needs are, because these are groups of parents that are getting together regularly. Okay. So, service on a scale. One of the things I wanted to make sure that this webinar does is give insights and offerings for different levels of financial commitment, of staff resources, of time available. COVID has made everything weird, but it certainly hasn't given us all more time. So, to make things sustainable, you definitely always want to consider, what do we have to give? And then, like I said before, talking about it's going to slightly depend on what your relationships are with the community, with homeschoolers, with the school district prior to COVID, but there are ways to build new ones. So, schooling at home, parents' needs. In addition to a stiff drink and a good nap, they need a lot of other things. We, as libraries, can't really provide drinks and naps, so one of the things that I highly recommend developing, if you haven't already, is a list of Zoom, Google Classroom tutorials, whatever the platforms are that your district is using. Nope, not all teachers provide these. And if you can find some that are also in our district, it's in Spanish, but if there are other very common first languages in your district, see if you can't find some online tutorials in those languages as well. Having this, you're not going to be the first line, right? But if you have this ready to go, panicked parents are going to be super grateful. Resources for teaching and coaching. So my example for this is math. I don't know how many of you are trying to do elementary school math. Casey said 5th grade math. So yeah, they don't do math the same way they did when I was in school. And I'm getting a lot of parents saying, I don't know how to do math. I am actually not smarter than my 5th grader. All of these sorts of things. Finding online resources, again, because parents need it relatively quickly or have only a little bit of time, for the way in which your school district is approaching things like math or certain kinds of logic grids that some of the teachers do. If you don't know what these areas of trickiness for your district might be, just talk to some parents, ask them, what's the hardest thing you're facing in trying to help your kid with learning? And this is what I'm talking about here is content learning for the teaching. For the coaching aspect, what I mean here is, sort of what Casey was talking about, like helping kids focus, helping kids not panic when they can't get in the classroom on time, all this sorts of stuff. This really falls into the realm of reassurance. And I don't know, maybe, I don't know if how common this is, but I do find that a valuable service I provide is assuring parents that they can do this, that it's hard, that they're human and they're allowed to be. Do I know the future? No. I don't know that everything's going to be okay, but I don't say everything's going to be okay. I say that it's hard and they're human and they're allowed to be. And then, so finally, particularly for kindergarten, kindergarten's not required. So what's happening in Red Hook, at least, is that there are a lot of pod kindergartens. So these are, as I'm sure you all know colloquially, the pod concept, groups of families with a kindergartner, at least one in their family, coming together to share the educational burden among the adults. My boss came up with the concept of concierge librarianship, which she was offering in the spring, meaning me. And it turns out that people, particularly people who are podding and homeschoolers, so not just schooling at home, love the ability to send an email to someone, know that there is someone on the staff where they can send an email and say, I want to teach my kid about, the most recent one I got is about medieval knights. You know, and she gave me a couple of different goals that she had for teaching about this. And the beautiful thing about being able to ask is that we can basically curate for them so that they don't end up with a stack of books, half of which are too challenging for their kid or go into more detail than a 5-year-old might want, etc. And you can also help them with a mix that way of fiction and nonfiction, which is what a lot of the kindergarten families are looking for. With homeschoolers, the reference questions can be, you know, the pods I am serving are both kindergarten pods, both two of them, but homeschoolers will ask far more complex reference questions, and honestly, it's kind of fun and a delight to help them. And again, the service that you are providing is a reader's advisory, essentially, but not just with fiction, but helping them to get the resources that out of the system that best meet their needs. And this is an easy, this type of reference, making it known that this is an option for people is a very, as long as you have a staff member who is willing, it doesn't cost much. It costs the staff a little bit of staff time. Well, depends on the question, but it costs staff time, and then materials can be requested and folks don't even have to come in the library if you're offering curbside, which is something a lot of the homeschooling families seem to appreciate. So I mentioned before a little bit about ENL and special education. So this is based on my experience in Red Hook, but it is something that you might want to be aware of. So for ENL in particular, what we have found, we have a collection of circulating devices. So we have Chromebooks mostly, and we have hotspots. What we found in our district is that there are a number of families who have undocumented family members, and the paperwork required to sign for the school devices, for some families, they did not want to sign it, so they didn't get it, which means that there are students who don't have a device and or internet service in their homes. So I find out about these students through the ENL teacher. And I'm not saying call your ENL teacher and be like, hey, do you have undocumented students? Obviously, right? But if you, again, send the email to the ENL teachers, we have a head one at the different schools, and say, we're here, this is what we have to offer. Even just offering them access to bilingual materials. A lot of the school libraries are on very restricted loaning rules, so that can be a help as well. Basically, this means that a lot of home visits, actually, delivering technology, not going inside, but meeting families in their driveways, teaching them how to use the Chromebook, the hotspot, showing them how to set it up. It also is really helpful if you teach the ENL teacher exactly on the device that you're dropping off. don't assume that all teachers are equally tech savvy. I mean, just don't assume all people are tech savvy, but that includes teachers as well. And again, this is another example of where if you have found tutorials in Spanish for Google Classroom and for Zoom, etc., it can help the parents help the kids, which is an important aspect of schooling at home. For special education needs, this is, going to vary widely, and partly these things are because I already had existing programs for kids and teenagers with disabilities, particularly intellectual and cognitive disabilities. But part of it is redefining the purpose of my interactions with them. So one of the most important things for them has been connection. These are kids whose education, when they are able to be in person, is offered by a team of people. And now they are at home with their families and getting some services remotely, but it's completely different. And for many kids, this can be really disorienting. Offering them some familiar bit of connection is helpful. So every Saturday, since March, I have canceled a few times, but not very many. We have a All Abilities Teen dance party on Zoom. Is there an educational purpose here? Nope. It's an hour of a YouTube playlist that we put together over the course of the week. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. And then we just dance together and sing. And yeah, you wish that everyone were on mute, but that's not the case. But it's okay because it's great. The families are thrilled. The kids look forward to it. During the week, they email me either through a parent or directly and tell me what songs they want. They know the ones who are able to look it up on YouTube, find a clean lyrics version, because everyone likes to be able to see the words in case they want to sing. And it gives a certain amount of structure. They have something to look forward to. They have an additional fun assignment / project during the week. For a couple of the kids, especially in the spring when things were really disorienting, I had daily or weekly phone calls. So 2 of the kids called me daily, Monday through Friday. It was on their daily schedule, and their job was to let me know how they were doing, how their families were doing. It helped their parents, it helped the kids, and it was, 5 minutes each out of my day. So again, this is going to depend on your availability, your prior relationships, but think about ways in which you can provide social connection and structure. And, in these examples, I'm talking about kids who would receive special education services in the school, but there's the need for social connection and structure for all of the families. All right. So, Kayleigh, we have 3 presenters today, luckily enough. Kayleigh Hartnett, formerly of Putnam Valley Library, but now of the school district, is going to talk about collection development. Chrissy Lawlor from Olive Free Library is going to talk about the circulating kits and resources that she's putting together. And Paul Agne from Red Hook Public Library is going to talk about science programs for homeschoolers. Kayleigh, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Lovely. Okay. So, hi everyone. My name is Kayleigh. So, we're going to be talking about how we as libraries can support our homeschool and remote learning communities through something as simple as collection development, something that's not programming, that's not, extremely affected by COVID, except for the circulation aspect of it itself. So, this is something that's nice and easy for us to do, and it's going to be super valuable for those communities. All right, advanced slide. Next slide, Amy, if we can. Perfect. All right, so just a little introduction for myself. Again, my name is Kayleigh. I currently live in Peekskill, New York. I have a bachelor's in biology from SUNY Oneonta, so I do a lot of science programming, working on my master's in library and informational science from Syracuse University with a concentration in school media. So those pictures on the right are me in the library with all of our books that we've been getting during quarantine, and then also in the school district, as you can see. masks all over the face. It's been great. I have about 6+ years experience working in libraries and 2 years experience working as a children's librarian for Putnam Valley. All right, next up. So that was just a little bit about me. So a new school year this year takes on an entirely new meaning. So I have a couple of memes in here just for your entertainment, but everyone is like, whoa, what's happening? All right, next slide. And we're all thinking that distance education is going to be here for a while. So this is something that we're going to be doing. COVID doesn't seem to be going away. This is just to keep everyone safe. We're going through the motions of creating these remote learning programs. And there's also been an extreme uptick in the homeschool community population, with parents coming in to the library, to the school district saying, I'm not comfortable sending my kids in. I want to homeschool. All right, next up. So if remote learning is going to be the new normal, at least for now, how are we as libraries going to accommodate these growing populations of both the homeschool families as well as students learning at home? Because as Amy said before, there is a difference. So one option is through collection development. So this is something, like I said before, this is something you can do that's not going to be programming, but it's still a super valuable resource for these parents, and they're not going to be spending a bajillion dollars buying all of these curriculum materials for themselves. All right, next up. So just some quick facts about homeschooling and students in general for the United States and then specifically New York. So 50.8 million students were enrolled in public schools in 2016. So thinking on that, how many of those students are actually remote learning now? It's going to be a very high percentage. So that's a lot of people. It's a new population of people who we're trying to serve. And then of those students, almost 95,000 resided just in the counties that Mid-Hudson Library System serves. So Columbia, Dutchess, Greene, Putnam, and Ulster counties. We all have 95,000 students that are probably all mostly remote learning at this point in time. And this is just public schools. It doesn't even count Catholic schools, private schools, charter schools, all those good things. So 1.7 million students were homeschooled in 2016. So that's obviously a lower number, but it's still a significant percentage of the students. And then nearly 78% of those homeschool parents reported using their public library as their resource for educational materials. So that is, out of all the circulation that we do, especially in the children's department and all that stuff, a lot of those materials are going to homeschooling and we don't even know it. And then the average amount of money that a parent spends on homeschooling, and this is per year, per child, is $300 to $600. And we all know that that is not sustainable for a lot of families in all of our communities, as well as these parents who are being thrust into remote learning, or they don't trust the remote learning and they want to homeschool. What are they going to do now? They're looking to buy these curriculums, all these homeschooling pods. It's very overwhelming and it's also very costly. So we're going to be looking at how we can use collection development as a way to bring down homeschooling costs for those families. Next up. So services and resources that your library can provide through collection development. So there are two separate sections that I've separated out for us today. So there are curriculum books. So these are physical curriculums themselves. So these are the lessons, the activities. These are what the parents are going to be teaching their kids. So we work very closely with our homeschool community. We're very lucky that we have a very active homeschooling mom who we've worked closely with programming. She's come in and done homeschooling programming at the library before COVID. She had a homeschooling group that came in, and she's the one who came to the Putnam Valley Library and was like, hey, the school district needs our help with disseminating information on homeschooling, and this is how I ended up developing all of these programmings and infrastructures, and as well as developing my idea of using collection development to help these communities. So when I speak to her, I'm always like, what are you using? Because I don't want to be buying books and curriculum that are just going to sit there that these families aren't using. So I highly recommend seeing what curricula are most popular in your area, because then you're best serving your community by supplying those materials if that's the direction you want to go in. There's also the idea of doing a try before you buy collection. So this is where parents can look at the curriculum books, try them out for a week, and then see if they want to actually use that curriculum for their kids. And this is more sustainable for us as libraries, just because with these curriculum books, we don't want to be loaning them out for the entire school year. We want to be able to have them available for multiple families to use. So this wouldn't affect the loan periods, and the parents get to try out the curriculum before they purchase it for themselves. There's also online curriculum subscriptions, so you can look into that and see what options there are for online options for parents who don't want to come into the library, they don't even want to do curbside pickup for whatever reason. It's just easier for them to stay home and work on their curriculum at home online. So see what's up with that. See if you can swing getting an online curriculum. And then what and if any curricular materials are provided by your school district. So I know, speaking with the homeschool mom that we work with, it is very rare for your school district to provide any materials for children who are homeschooling. So that's a little different this year with the remote learning. So remote learning students who are technically still enrolled in the public school will get these resources, but it's not guaranteed that the homeschooling students are going to receive the same benefit since they're not enrolled in the school. Putnam Valley Central School District are very kind, and they send out a few textbooks they allow the homeschoolers to take home. They allow them to use the Wordly Wise curriculum, which is a very popular phonics and vocab developing and grammar curriculum that's used in the schools. So that's an option that you could go to your schools and see if they have anything that they provide, just in case they do. And that way, that's one thing that you don't have to provide and don't have to buy. Another section is the curriculum support materials. So these are items that you're going to be using to support the students' learning. So these are things like lesson kits. So lesson kits would be basically just a collection of 2 to 3 books. This is something we're developing at the Putnam Valley Library right now. We did a fundraiser with Usborne. We're going to purchase books with that fundraising money to create these lesson kits, and they would have activities in them, a lesson. So this is an easy grab and go for parents who aren't really confident in their teaching abilities yet, and they have all of these books and materials for them all wrapped up in this nice kit that they can just grab and go. There's also, in the book kits, you compare fiction and nonfiction to increase understanding and just interest with the kids with the reading. Like I said, put the lessons activities in there. And then also manipulatives is a big part of the schooling experience that kids aren't really getting right now because they don't have these items at home. So these are like counting cubes, the math cubes, any of the shapes that little kids use. These are magnet letters, that kind of stuff. So you can find these pretty cheap on Amazon and create kits to send home with parents so that their students can use these manipulatives that they're not going to be getting in the classroom. All right, next up. So just a couple of tips and tricks on how to use collection development in this situation. So low on funding, look for grants. There is this one library that I will talk about later that will be a great resource for y'all. And they received an $80,000 grant to develop a homeschool support collection, and they have done a wonderful job. So look for grants. I'm sure people are going to be putting out these grants specifically for remote learners and for homeschoolers. You just got to go out and look for them and figure that out. And then there's also the possibility of running a fundraiser. So that's what the Putnam Valley Library just did. It's very easy to partner with Usborne to run a fundraiser. And if you find a rep in your area, they'll set the whole thing up for you. It's just a Facebook fundraiser, and they match all proceeds donated up to 50%. So you get 1.5 times whatever people donate. And it ends up being a significant amount. You can buy a lot of really awesome homeschool materials from Usborne, which is a super popular resource for homeschooling parents. So you're kind of hitting 2 birds with 1 stone there. One thing to think about is how can you serve your homeschooling parents as well, and not just students. So these students, they're going through their day, they have their curriculum, and they're just waiting to be taught. And if you're at home, the parents are the teachers. If you have parents who are new to homeschooling and they don't have any educational experience teaching, then they're going to be at a loss and overwhelmed as well. So look to see if you can buy books that are going to help guide parents through this process. And then another tip would be to think about what items were traditionally supplied by schools, like calculators is one thing I thought of that are not going to be supplied now that you could send out on a loan basis. And then your collection is not just books. This is something that I love to see these days with libraries, are these non-traditional collections, these library of things. So I love to see when libraries have like microscopes available, they have science stuff, like beakers. So these things, I've done a little bit of research on this on Amazon, and there are electronic microscopes that you use just by plugging a USB into your computer, and you can just use it as a microscope. It's super small, and I don't think it was even that expensive. And you can buy microscope slides, all that stuff. And homeschoolers really love those physical materials that they can use that they're not going to buy themselves, but that the library has available for them. And then one last tip is to do your research and look into your community before you buy. Send out those surveys, peep into Facebook groups, and assess the need of your community before you spend your money and you're buying items that ultimately don't end up circulating, which is always a bummer, but it happens. So make sure you do that research and see what your community is asking for. So the benefits of a homeschool support collection are parents are spending less money on curriculum materials. Like I said before, it's $300 to $600 per kid. That's a lot of dollars, especially if you have more than one kid. There's also the increased variety of curriculum materials for homeschool families to use, so they're not just using your traditional nonfiction section. This is a collection that's specified and made just for them with those lesson kits and mandated curriculum materials that the state has for them that it's required for them to learn about, and you have those kits there for them and they can just check that box off nice and easy. This will support your homeschool families and your remote learners. So 2 birds with 1 stone right here, and that's awesome for libraries and getting that value. You're going to build a stronger partnership with your homeschool community, which is we're always looking to do as libraries, are building those relationships, putting all of our influence out into the community and seeing what we can receive from them as well. And then provide, do you guys need this one desk that I'm sitting at? Okay, one second. Sorry, I gotta move.
I should have told you.
No worries.
I wasn't forward thinking.
And a last benefit that we have here would be to provide resources to parents to strengthen their home classroom skills. So like I said before, you look to see how you can serve the parents and not just the students, because the parents are the teachers here and they're going to need our help too. All right, next up, just some things to take into consideration when you're building this community. Thank you. When you're building this collection, looking at this community, the distribution of student ages in your homeschool community, this is going to dictate what level of books you are buying. So you could buy a science book for a kindergartner, but that's not going to work for a 6th grader. But if you have more kindergartners in your area, you might want to buy more books that are leveled towards them. So it's something to keep in mind. And then also what you already have in your collection, either your physical collection or your digital collection, and what you could kind of move around to highlight as a supplemental material for homeschool curriculum, but you're not buying new stuff. I would also take a peek at the New York State curriculum standards, because there are, like I said, there are certain boxes that these students need to check, there's a patriotism requirement, there's social responsibility. So just looking at that and seeing how you could fulfill those with lesson kits or books, whatever. Also, your floor and shelf space, and also staff time. Excuse me. So what space do you have? Do you have room to make a big shelf of a homeschool collection or not? Excuse me one second. Wearing a mask all day. And then your staff time. Do you have staff who are going to be available to catalog these new materials? And also marketing new services and resources. Make sure you get the news out to your community that you have this stuff available. And then also loan period adjustments, taking a look at maybe homeschool collection stuff goes out for a longer time. Maybe it goes out for a shorter time. Thinking about how these students are going to be using this stuff. Excuse me. So some helpful resources for your homeschool parents. So there are plenty of Facebook groups out there. The homeschool community is super tight-knit. They love to talk to each other. And there are plenty of Facebook groups out there for your parents to join. There are Christian Facebook groups as well as secular, because you do have that split in the homeschoolers. And then there's also the curriculum resources that I have here. This is just a list of resources that they could look into to see what curriculum they want to buy for their students. All right, next up. Last but not least, we have our resources for library staff. So these are what we can use to help our parents and also to help us figure out what we're going to be buying for these collections. So there's Kathy Duffy Reviews. So these are links. So it's just Kathy Duffy Reviews. You can Google that. She is considered to be the homeschooling guru in basically the United States. So this is a resource for reliable and extremely extensive homeschool curriculum reviews. And she splits it up by subject, by grade, by author, by whether it's a textbook, a fiction book. She has everything. And then also the Johnsburg Public Library Homeschool Resource Center. Google that, check out their page, and they have so many amazing resources, have given me so many great ideas on how to use excuse me, collection development for the homeschool communities. So just some resources for you to take a peek at, and I think that's it.
Thank you very much. Carol just asked, is it possible to go back one slide? Carol, all of the slides will be sent out. I'm sorry, just because I want to make sure the other get a chance to speak. Sorry, I muted myself there for a second. Chrissy, you're up.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So Olive has been working on preparing themed kits for homeschool families. The program coordinator, Amy Grant, and I had started planning this and talking about different things we could do. She had, when she lived in Indiana and took her kids to the library there were kits available for people to take home. So we started basing our kits off of the ones that were there. So mainly the thought came from when I had homeschooled my kids, I kind of wished that there was a kits available for people to take home. A lot of times I would be working on a unit with my kids and I would get about 20 books or so from the library and really end up only using a few of the books because they just weren't, they were either below or above grade level for my kids or just didn't have enough information in them. So when you are homeschooling, you really need to pull together a lot of different resources. I would spend a lot of time on Pinterest looking for hands-on projects or games to do with them. And then, and then also the cost factor too. Teachers Pay Teachers is a great resource, but again, you have to pay a lot of money. And like Amy had said earlier, it's pretty expensive to homeschool. So that's kind of where, we're trying to pull together as many resources and things for homeschoolers and students that are doing school from home too. So mostly right now, we're working on about 4 to 5 different kits. And the plan is to have in each themed kit 3 to 4 books. On the slide, you can see a couple of the books. Right now, we're working on the human body kit. And each of the books the one book, the Janice Van Cleve's book, has a lot of activities. That's a really great book. It has a lot of different things you can do. So it'll have a few different books, and then we're also going to have either like a card game or some type of model that goes along with the kit. So for the human body one, we have Professor Noggin, the human body trivia game for kids to play, and it's recommended for ages 7 and up. And then we're also putting in each kit 1 to 2 hands-on projects. So for the human body one, we have right now Body Bingo, and it's a bingo sheet, and the kids then cut out, there's different squares that have different parts of the body, and then there's a few different levels. So based upon, like if you have younger kids, the questions are pretty simple and easy, and then they get harder as you go. And then also another one we have is a brain hemisphere hat, where they would actually put together and make a hat with the different hemispheres of the brain. So that's kind of what each kit will have. So that way it's really a complete kit for the parents, and they don't have to spend a ton of time running around looking for different resources. A few of the themes that we're working on right now, like I said, was the human body, planets, ancient civilizations, money, and addition, subtraction. We're trying to keep the kits at a specific age range, so that way, you know, younger kids, younger elementary, like K to 4, and then other kits that'll be available for middle grades, like 5th through 8th grade. The kits mostly are between like $50 to $75 for the library, which right now, because we haven't been doing any programming since March, really, we're going to use programming money to put the kits together. And the other plan is that we're going to make them available to the Ulster County Library Association. So right now, UCLA is working on getting some other homeschool resources together. So we're hoping to have, you know, a list of kits, and some of the other libraries have mentioned that they're interested in making some kits too. But ultimately the goal would be, you know, to have things that people might not necessarily want to pay for themselves, or, you know, or keep forever. So one thing I used to always wish that we had access was to a microscope when doing like a biology unit. It would be great to have a microscope, because it's not something that you would necessarily use all the time or want to invest money in. So, you know, ultimately, hopefully we can get kits together that have these bigger items and things that people might not necessarily want to invest money in. So
Thank you, Chrissy. That was
yeah.
awesome. We have a couple, no, there'll be, questions are at the end. We have a couple similar sorts of kits that circulate in Red Hook, and they're really popular. Okay, and I'm rushing a little bit because I want to make sure you guys can ask questions of the speakers, but Paul, oh goodness, me in the space bar. There we go. Paul, it's all you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hi, I'm Paul from the Red Hook Public Library, even though you can't see me. So I'm just going to be talking today about our homeschool laboratory program that I've been running for the past couple of years at the library. So before I get into the actual program itself, I want to just go back into how we got to running the program really briefly. So Red Hook Library, we've been offering programs for homeschoolers for a long time. Years ago, we ran a multifaceted homeschool discovery zone for 5 to 8 kids, and that covered topics from English and history to geography. And also around that time, the library director was talking to schools and community, and there was a realization that there was a need for more STEM programming. So we offered things like Red Hook Makes, a makerspace series of programs at the library and high school. We offered science programs at the rec park. We did science camps in the summer. We did STEAM half days. Anyway, fast forward to 2017, after our director left and we had some program drop off because of a construction project, we decided we wanted to launch a new homeschool program. After speaking with some homeschool moms, John, our program coordinator at the time, learned that many homeschoolers struggled teaching science. So he conceived of Homeschool Laboratory, which was developed in response to that request. And that started off with a small group as well, with 5 to 8 kids, and remained steady throughout 2017. And then, of course, he ended up leaving as well as our youth services coordinator. And since then, I've been running Laboratory. Over 2018, our core group grew to about 12 to 15 kids. In 2019, it grew to 15 to 22. And their parents, so that would be roughly like 30 kids or so, and parents in the building at the time. And of course, as Laboratory has grown, I've brought in an assistant to help distribute materials and assist the children. By the fall of 2019, it had grown a bit too large, with some groups of 40 to 50 kids, which we needed to break down into 2 groups, meeting on alternating weeks with signups. Anyway, so that's kind of the long arch of how our Laboratory program has gone for the past several years. But let me just go into why homeschool science. What are the benefits? So there are many reasons to offer science programs to homeschool families, and one of the chief ones is benefits to homeschoolers, right? So there's the socialization aspect, of course. Homeschooling can be isolating for kids and parents, and it gives the kids the opportunity to work with other children their age and make new friends. Also, there's the educational content that's offered. So homeschoolers pay taxes but don't attend school. So libraries are a resource and a refuge for them. They get to experience the materials of the library. They get to come to the programs, and they also get to just have fun and have a fun time with other people. Also, science activities are kind of messy and involved, so parents are a little bit less inclined to run them probably. So parents, they get to relax to an extent with some educational content materials prepared for them. They get to relax with their kids and have fun and enjoy co-learning with them. And also, they get to leave behind that mess. So that's a huge benefit, right?
Sorry, I'm laughing.
Although some parents do stick around with their kids and teach them the lessons of how to clean up properly and all that, so that's nice. Also, there's the entertainment value. Patrons want to have fun, and engaged children want to come back to the library and have more fun. And of course, there's a community and networking aspect for the parents. They get to meet other parents, homeschool parents, and share resources, experiences, and set up play dates. Of course, you might be asking, what's the benefit to the library? So there are many benefits. Of course, you could advance the slide. There's the obvious one is the regular program attendance. Next slide, Amy. Amy, next slide.
No, I am advancing. You're not seeing them?
Oh, I'm just not seeing it. Okay. So anyway.
I think they're now ahead of you.
No problem. So just go back to the benefits for homeschoolers.
Yep.
And
I'll fix it. You can.
Okay. Anyway, so there's the regular program attendance, which is good. Then there's also the increased circulation. Of course, it's a little bit different now with COVID. And then, of course, homeschoolers are library advocates. And hopefully there's a picture up there with Ginger and her mom holding sign, do we need the library? Yes. She actually ended up coming with us to Library Advocacy Day this past year, so that was great. And all the different homeschool families are wonderful advocates for the library, and you could have them fill out the library calculator, and they will gladly do that and take a picture, and they're wonderful. So then let's go on to the next slide, which would be, what is Laboratory exactly? Laboratory is a weekly hands-on science program with activities and experiments for kids ages 6 to 10. The scope is roughly about an hour to hour and a half with 12 to 22 or so kids. The lesson structure is that I always start with a discussion of the topic, so it's kind of informal, and they can just, we can throw out a topic and say, what do you know about it? And then the kids can discuss it, and then they feel relaxed and ready to get into the topic. Then I introduce the scientific concepts, and then I go into the 3 different activities that I have planned. Usually the easiest to start, and we start with like maybe a worksheet or something to color, just so that the youngest kids can, get, feel success. And then we move on to the harder activities. Some tips I would put is just to always have a structured lesson plan, because otherwise, it could go haywire. Also, always test your demonstrations and experiments beforehand so that you know that they work. And then, of course, I just recommend at the end showing something kind of aspirational or astounding if you can, to make them happy and show them, science is great, and build a sense of wonder and curiosity. Some of the projects.
Sorry, Paul, just a second. It seems that I'm seeing the slides advance, but nobody else is.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to try and fix that. I see in the chat, I'm trying. And Paul will just keep talking.
No problem. Okay. So some of the projects that we have done in the laboratory program have been some of the most popular ones have been food science programs. So we've made butter and buttermilk. That's really a fun one to do. You can just put a marble in a jar, and then put some heavy whipping cream in there, and you shake it up, and you can make butter and buttermilk. Really fun one. You can also make ice cream in a bag. You can make cheese. We've also done a lot of engineering activities with hydraulics. We've made catapults. We've done squishy circuits, which is a fun one if you want to get it's conductive Play-Doh and non-conductive Play-Doh, and then you have LEDs to light up. Other things we've done have involved earth science, plate tectonics, extreme weather. We've also done lots of chemistry stuff. Elephant toothpaste is one of my favorites. It involves catalysts, and then of course red cabbage experiments for acid and base indicators are great, and then of course slime and oobleck are a fan favorite as well. So some of the challenges with this type of program are that parents don't always allow room for independent learning. That's my way of saying that they can be kind of like helicopter parents and not let their kids fail and all that. So that's a challenge, of course. Of course, another challenge is building your group. So having a weekly routine does help. The large groups and mass activities can be a challenge, so consider having extra staff if you can. Also consider having a sign up to better gauge the quantity of materials you'll need to prepare. And that brings me into supply budget constraints. Determine how much money your library has budget for. You can definitely reconsider anything that requires more than $1 per child. And then of course, facility limitations. Do you have the room? Do you have a kitchen? Do you need technology? And then of course the age range. So consider the age range. Mine's for 6 to 10. So that means that I have to cater to the youngest because otherwise they would struggle and not do well. So you have to make sure to have stuff that's going to make all of the children happy. Moving on, I have been offering Laboratory 2, which is a laboratory for older kids. So around 2018, some of our oldest laboratory participants had begun to age out and they asked for something similar. So I offered a monthly program for ages 11 plus with a narrower focus, and we spend more time on one topic. And then we get into different questions or challenges that they need to address. And we do worksheets with blueprints, data collection, and questions to answer. And then, of course, the final slide that I have here is homeschool science in the time of COVID, right? And I like to call that a tale of two virtual programs. It was the best of times, was the worst of times, yes. In March of 2020, due to COVID, we were forced to halt in-person programming, of course. This led to my filming, editing, and posting several recorded sessions of laboratory for YouTube. This method did have a bit of a learning curve for me. I had challenges with lighting. I needed to record without the sun behind me, without light moving throughout the day. I needed to add title and material slides so that we could have reference points for people and so that they would know what materials they needed. And also I needed to edit the video to make it more concise and engaging. And I needed to learn how to do voiceovers. So all of these videos eventually got posted to our YouTube channel so that kids could experience these programs virtually, independently. Then of course this fall, as an experiment in itself, I'm offering some live virtual Laboratory 2 sessions via Zoom. And in this version of the program, I do have a sign up, and I'm, because these experiments do require specific materials, I'm preparing material packets to provide ahead of time. And then of course, I send out a Zoom invite and any instructions they need about a week prior to the program. And we did one this past Tuesday with about 5 attending feeds, which worked pretty well. We had one feed had 2 kids and one had 4, so we had roughly 9, I think, coming. So that was good. We're going to do that again this coming month. And anyway, that's the long and short history of Laboratory and Laboratory 2 at the Red Hook Library. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Thanks, Paul. So we're running out of time, and I want to make sure everyone gets to ask questions if they have them. So we will just for the moment skip this, but there were a lot of great ideas in all of the presentations on marketing and promotion. I apologize, I don't know, so something going on with my internet connection that made the slides not advance on your screens. You will get the full slide deck and all the awesome photos of kids enjoying laboratory in your follow-up email. So if there are any questions, you can put them in the chat, I guess. Okay, I will go back through the chat and make sure to email specific questions that were asked either to the presenters or send a response. So thank you all for coming. If you want to directly contact any of the presenters or myself or Casey, here is everyone's contact information. Oh, Miss Jen. Oops, okay. There are a few questions, which I will now open. Okay, so Ms. Jen said, not a question. Yeah, I covered the school librarians connection at the beginning. School librarians are some of our best community partners. And Courtney asks, are there any other methods you use to reach out to homeschooling parents? The Facebook groups are a good one, but honestly, this is generally my philosophy about programming and services anyway. Ask the people who are coming in. 9 times out of 10, your staff on your children's desk or in your children's library, they'll know who the homeschooling families are. They use the public library. And then just ask if you can chat with them. They will not only have ideas about what they need, but they will know a lot of other homeschooling families as well. And there are some homeschool co-ops. They are even meeting outdoors right now. So you can also ask around there. Okay, thank you everyone very much. Again, I apologize for the technical difficulties, and you'll get the full set of slides in the follow-up.